He paid for first class, but what he got was humiliation served on a tray. A moldy sandwich slapped down in front of him, his premium meal missing, and racist whispers leaking from the galley. He doesn't belong here. Then the captain made it worse, branding him a disruption over the intercom, threatening to divert the plane. Every passenger froze. But what they didn't know is this black man held the kind of power that could ground an entire crew and rewrite the rules at $30,000 FTAO the cabin. Lights dimmed as passengers settled into the long-haul flight. In seat 2A, a tall, sharply dressed black man, Jonathan Reed, closed his laptop and reached for the service button. He had booked this route weeks in advance, ordered his preferred meal, and expected nothing less than what his ticket guaranteed. When the flight attendant approached, she didn't offer the menu or the drink list. Instead, she tossed a wrapped sandwich onto his tray table. The bread was gray at the edges, speckled with mold. Jonathan looked down at it, then back up at her. "I pre-ordered the steak on tray. This isn't it." Her lips curled in something that wasn't quite a smile. "That's all we have. Take it or leave it." He kept his voice steady. "Could you please check the manifest?" My order was confirmed twice. Behind her, another crew member muttered, just loud enough to carry, "He doesn't belong up here anyway." A few passengers shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Jonathan leaned back, calm but calculating. He had faced worse than a moldy sandwich, but something inside him knew this was deliberate. This wasn't about food, it was about reminding him of his place. Minutes later, the cabin intercom crackled. The captain's voice rolled through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're addressing a disruptive passenger in first class. Please remain seated. If necessary, we may divert." Heads turned. Jonathan sat still, his hands folded neatly in his lap. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't made a scene. But now the captain was branding him a threat before the entire plane. Tension thickened. Some passengers avoided his gaze. A woman across the aisle quietly pulled out her phone, hitting record. Another whispered, "This doesn't feel right." Jonathan finally spoke. Not loudly, but firmly enough for the row to hear. "If the captain believes I'm disruptive, perhaps he should review the cabin footage." The attendants froze. Their eyes flickered with panic, the kind that comes when someone knows a secret has just been exposed. Jonathan slid a small black device from his carry-on. "This aircraft is fitted with interior surveillance cameras that I helped approve when I sat on this airline's compliance board. Every second of this flight is being recorded, including your behavior, your words, and your service decisions." Gasps rippled through first class. The murmurs grew. One passenger called out, "So, we're all on camera?" Jonathan nodded once. "Yes, and when we land, I'll be reviewing that footage personally with HR." The flight attendant stammered. One tried to collect herself. You can't just..." He cut her off with quiet authority. "I already have. The system is live. Do you really want to continue this performance knowing everything is documented?" The crowd shifted. Where there had been silence, now there were allies. The woman with the phone raised it higher. A man across the aisle said, "I saw what happened. He's been nothing but calm." The attendant's control slipped. The captain, unaware of the shift in cabin mood, stepped out of the cockpit. His voice was sharp. "Sir, you've disrupted this flight. If you don't comply, we'll remove you when we land." Jonathan met his eyes without flinching. "No, Captain. When we land, it won't be me leaving this plane. It'll be your crew." The cabin erupted. Some clapped. Others shouted in agreement. The balance of power had shifted completely. 20 minutes later, the jet touched down at the nearest hub. The door opened, and instead of security rushing Jonathan, 2 HR officials in Navy suits boarded. They didn't look at him. They looked directly at the captain. "Captain Willis, Flight Attendants Miller and Hayes, gather your belongings. You're relieved of duty, effective immediately." The crew blanched. "You can't be serious." The taller official's tone was ice. "We've reviewed passenger statements and initial footage. You're done." Gasps filled the cabin. Passengers filmed every moment as the disgraced crew shuffled down the aisle. Faces burning with humiliation, Jonathan sat still, hands folded, watching justice unfold in real time. When the replacement crew stepped on board, Jonathan finally rose. He didn't raise his voice, but his words carried weight. Ladies and gentlemen, no one should ever be humiliated for the color of their skin or the seat they paid for. Tonight, you witnessed prejudice exposed and accountability delivered. As of this moment, every passenger here will receive a full refund, plus complimentary travel credits. That's not charity. It's acknowledgement. Because silence no longer flies. The cabin roared in applause. For the first time since takeoff, Jonathan allowed himself a small, steady smile. Hours later, the video spread online. Passengers posting clips, news outlets replaying the removal, hashtags climbing into trending charts. But the real impact came months later when the airline announced sweeping reforms. New anti-bias training, independent oversight, and a cabin culture that put dignity above hierarchy. And somewhere in that ripple effect, one truth stood tall at 30. 00 FT, real power isn't loud, and respect isn't handed out with a uniform. It's earned by truth, by justice, and by those who refuse to bow. If this story struck a nerve, don't just scroll past. Hit that like button, share this video so more people see the truth, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and which moment shook you the most. Your voice keeps these stories alive.